The afternoon shift at Miller's Market moved with the steady rhythm that 17-year-old David Coleman had come to know by heart. Beep, scan, bag. Thank you, have a blessed day. Beep, scan, bag. It was honest work that helped him save for college while supporting his single mother, and David took pride in treating every customer with the same respectful courtesy his grandmother had taught him. The store was busier than usual for a Tuesday, with customers lined up behind shopping, carts filled with weekly necessities. David worked efficiently but never rushed, understanding that for many of the elderly customers who frequented Miller's Market, this trip might be the highlight of their day, a chance for human connection in lives that had grown quiet over the years. When Mrs. Eleanor Whitman approached his checkout lane, David noticed her immediately. At 83, she moved with the careful steps of someone whose bones remembered every decade they'd carried her through. Her gray hair was neatly pinned beneath a worn but clean headscarf, and her coat, though patched in places, was buttoned with dignity. In her trembling hands, she carried 6 dinner rolls, the kind that cost $1.49 for the package. Simple food for what David suspected might be simple means. "Good afternoon, ma'am," David said with a genuine smile, the kind that reached his eyes and made them warm. "How are you doing today?" "Oh, I'm getting along, young man," Mrs. Whitman replied, her voice carrying the soft cadence of someone who'd learned grace through hardship. "These rolls looked so fresh I thought I'd treat myself." David scanned the package and watched as Mrs. Whitman carefully opened a small, worn purse that had clearly seen many years of faithful service. Her fingers, marked with the brown spots of age, counted coins with the precision of someone for whom every penny mattered. 64 cents, she murmured to herself, then looked up at David with eyes that held both disappointment and embarrassment. "I'm sorry, dear. I seem to be 85 cents short. I thought I had enough." Behind her, David could see the line growing longer. He heard the subtle sighs of impatient shoppers, the shuffle of feet, the quiet grumbling that comes when people are tired and just want to get home. But all of that faded as he looked at Mrs. Whitman's face, the way she was trying so hard to maintain her composure, the slight tremor in her voice that spoke of deeper vulnerabilities than just missing change. Without hesitation, David reached into his own pocket and pulled out a crumpled dollar bill from his tip money, earnings from helping customers carry groceries to their cars. "You know what, Mrs. Whitman? Today's your lucky day. These rolls are on special promotion. Senior. Discount brings them down to exactly 64 cents. He input the transaction smoothly, making change from his own money to balance the register later. Mrs. Whitman's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled with such genuine gratitude that David felt his heart squeeze tight in his chest. "Bless you, child," she whispered. "Your parents raised you right?" "Yes, ma'am." "They did," David replied softly, bagging her rolls with extra care. "You have a wonderful day, Mrs. Whitman." What David didn't know was that Mrs. Eleanor Whitman had been struggling more than anyone realized. Her Social Security check was stretched thin between medications, rent, and the basic necessities of life. Those dinner rolls represented a small luxury she'd been looking forward to all week, something fresh and warm to go with the soup she'd been eating for the past 3 days. What he also didn't know was that Mrs. Whitman had spent 40 years as a teacher at the local elementary school, touching hundreds of young lives with the same patient kindness he'd just shown her. In her modest apartment, she kept boxes of thank you letters from former students who'd gone on to become doctors, teachers, parents, and community leaders. 3 days later, David was surprised when his manager, Mr. Peterson, called him into the office. Even more surprising was seeing Mrs. Whitman sitting there, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "David," Mr. Peterson began, "Mrs. Whitman came in today with quite a story. She wanted to tell me about what happened Tuesday afternoon." Mrs. Whitman looked up at David with eyes that sparkled with mischief and warmth. "I may be old, young man, but I'm not foolish. I know there was no senior discount on those rolls, and I know that dollar came from your own pocket." David felt his cheeks warm. "Mrs. Whitman, it really wasn't. It was everything," she interrupted gently. "Do you know what those rolls meant to me? Not just the food, though that was lovely. It was being treated with dignity. It was knowing that kindness still exists in this world." She reached into her purse, the same worn purse from Tuesday, and pulled out an envelope. "I've written a letter to the corporate office about you, David, about how you represent the very best of what customer service should be. But more than that," her voice grew stronger, filled with the authority of someone who'd spent decades shaping young minds. "I've also reached out to my former colleagues in the school district. You mentioned you're saving for college. There are scholarships available for young people who demonstrate not just academic potential, but character. Real character." Mr. Peterson smiled, pulling out a folder. "The district called this morning, David. Mrs. Whitman has recommended you for the Eleanor Whitman Community Service Scholarship. Apparently, it's named after her late husband, who was the former superintendent." David's mouth fell open. "Mrs. Whitman, I can't accept—" "You can and you will," she said firmly, but with grandmother-like tenderness. "Do you think that 85 cents was the first kindness I've ever received? Or that it was the first I've ever given? Kindness creates circles, David. When someone shows you grace, you pass it on. When someone invests in you, you invest in others." Over the following months, David learned that Mrs. Whitman's story went deeper than he'd imagined. She and her late husband had established multiple scholarship funds over the years, quietly helping dozens of students achieve their dreams. The couple had never had children of their own, but they'd claimed every student they'd ever taught as their legacy. The scholarship covered David's first 2 years of college, where he studied education with a minor in social work. But the real education had happened in aisle 3 of Miller's Market, in a moment when simple human decency had created a bridge between 2 generations. Years later, when David returned to his hometown as a high school counselor, he would often think about that Tuesday afternoon. He kept a jar in his office filled with singles and loose change, his own version of the 85 cents that had changed his life. Students who came to him struggling with lunch money or field trip fees never left empty-handed, and every year on the anniversary of that day in the grocery store, David would buy fresh rolls from Miller's Market and deliver them to the senior center where Mrs. Whitman now lived. They would sit together, sharing bread and stories, 2 people whose lives had been forever intertwined by the simple understanding that 85 cents and an open heart could change the world. Because that's how grace works. It doesn't just fill the immediate need. It plants seeds that bloom in ways we never expect, creating gardens of kindness that stretch far beyond what our eyes can see and our hearts can imagine. Mrs. Whitman had learned this truth through decades of teaching. David learned it in a single moment of choosing compassion over convenience. And everyone who witnessed their story learned that the most powerful force in the world isn't money or influence. It's the willingness to see another person's dignity and do whatever small thing you can to honor it.